How you guys all feel? You guys had a good time so far? Well, my favorite part halfway through the weekend is that I'm not sore at all. My joints don't hurt, and I'm fully prepared to nail this the most I ever have tomorrow. Anyone else? Come on! No, I'm sorry. Jeez. My ego's a little bit sore after all the ego it happened, possibly you're out of the man, guys, before I get into this, I'm gonna try to speak to you guys just totally directly, totally authentically. Speak from the heart. What a lot of you guys are gonna be hearing today are gonna be events that transpired in my life over the last year that Joey and Matt have witnessed personally. And what I'm gonna try to do is share with you guys what I believe empowered me to experience the blessings of God on the other side of these events. And so before I get into that, I'm gonna thank Matt and thank Big P where you're at. I want to thank Abe for coming on this event. There is really something special about when you guys find a group of leaders, a group of men who are capable of cultivating an environment that brings forth the presence of God. Okay, this is an environment that brings forth the presence of God. This isn't just a men's group. There are a lot of great men's groups out there on the internet. You know, a lot of fake Navy SEAL training that we see all the time, right? And I've seen some of those. But this is truly a men's group where the presence of God is brought into, right? So I just want to honor you guys for ultimately following the calling that God has placed on your heart and living fully and making the hard decisions that have cultivated this experience. Guys. Yeah, guys, today, what I want to get into, just to kind of formally introduce myself. I know I've connected with all of you already. I know we probably all kind of know each other on some level, but my name is Gabe. So guys, I'm 23 years old. I've made over $1.2 million online by the grace of God in my business, defaultkings.com, alongside Joey. And at Default Kings, we pumped over 5-year guys as an average of 30.1 pounds a month. Now, those are really cool things that I do believe point to the glory of God. Does anyone agree? 500 plus guys losing 30 pounds point to the glory of God. I definitely think so, and I'm really excited about that. I'm really pumped about that. I'm really happy about that. I'm really excited for how those things are indicators of how God is going to continue to work. But I don't think that those are the reasons that you guys should listen to me today. I think the reason you guys should listen to me today is because I've witnessed the goodness of God. I've witnessed the goodness of God. Anytime you guys think about faith, has anyone ever had questions about faith? Like, what am I just supposed to believe? Literally. Hey, let's go. Like, I'm just gonna wait for God to show up. I'm just gonna trust His word. I'm gonna trust in all these things that everybody else says is so good about Jesus. Yeah, I think everybody kind of starts out like that. I definitely lived a lot of my life just trusting, just having faith, which I do believe you need. I do believe you absolutely need faith, trust in the things unseen. But I believe that it is much easier to have faith when you've witnessed the goodness of God. A lot of people ask for a sign from God. How good would it be if in those moments where you're struggling, how good would it be if in those moments where you had to make hard decisions, if you had some evidence to point to, and you had some credibility, if you had a track record of God being good in your life, how good would that be? Say, you know what, God, you did this for me, you did that for me, you did this for me, you did that for me, you protected me here, you provided for me there. I'm sure you'll do it again. How good would that feel? I feel pretty good. You did that. Go with it right here. I can say with certainty for sure that I have in my life at this point in time that level of witnessing the goodness of God. At this point in time, and that doesn't mean I don't struggle. That doesn't mean I don't have questions. That doesn't mean I don't have a lack of faith at points. That doesn't mean I don't have fears. It doesn't mean I'm not scared sometimes. Joey, I was scared every time to do grabs and kids guys. But it does mean that at this point in my life, when I'm scared, when I have a lack of faith, when I have fear, I'm able to point to some really cool things that God has done in my life. That proved to me that's capable of doing good things again, right, Jeff? You talked about how you now know that you can accomplish hard things because you conquered the Appalachian Trail hikes. You have that evidence to point to, right? That's where true confidence comes from. True confidence isn't just, I believe I can do the thing. True confidence comes from having proof of past competence. Having proof, having something to look back and to say, I've done this before, I've been here before, I've been out the other side, right? And that's where I'm kind of at in my faith journey right now. I've been through some things. I've dishonored God. I've sinned. I'm still a sinner. I'm still trying to get closer to God every single day. But at this point, I can look back and say, God, you've been good. God, you've been good. One of the most profound ways where I've witnessed God's goodness is in my relationship with my Father. Yes. Some of you probably know a little bit about the past in my relationship with my father. My relationship with my father was totally tarnished throughout my teenage years because of how I responded to his poor health. Okay, my father had type 2 diabetes. He also developed heart disease, liver cancer, dead. And on top of having heart disease, liver cancer, and type 2 diabetes, he ended up struggling with depression because of the downward negative mental spiral from struggling with these poor health issues and how that kneecapped his ability to provide, protect, and lead his family. He had to struggle with depression, and his depression got so bad to the point where when I was 16 years old, I was driving from practice or school or something, in the car with my mom, and my mom gets this call on the phone from my uncle, my dad's brother. And I had never really seen my uncle call my mom directly. Obviously, they talk if you're friends around school, but I'd never seen my uncle, my dad's brother, call my mom directly. Something up here is, and I hear my mom pick up the phone, and she's like, kind of concerned. She's like, hey, nephew. And my uncle says, Jaritza, Manny tried to kill herself. I overhear this out of the phone speaker from the passenger seat in my mom's car. Manny tried to kill himself. Now keep in mind, at this point in time, my dad is not home. He's on a business trip in another state. We're not even near this. Okay. And I overhear my uncle say to my mom that my dad just tried to kill himself. He tried to take his own life. And I thought, like, I heard a ghost. You know what I mean? Like, you know when Joey's chirping at you and he says something crazy? You're like, did I just hear that right? No way he just said that. Right? Like, what did you just say? That's kind of what it felt like. I was like, did I just hear that right? I really truly believe I didn't hear it correctly. I remember sitting in that car being like, no way I just heard that. I did cry. Wasn't sad. I think what really confused me was that when my mom heard that, she didn't say, you look at me, didn't tell me. She didn't really react. She said, okay, let's talk about it later. Beer. Awesome. Anyway, I end up hearing that and hear confirmation that my dad did in fact try to take his own life. And my reaction to hearing this news was, of course, sadness for fear. Oh my God, my dad's trying to kill himself. Is he okay? What's going on? Tears, the whole nine. But there was a level of numbness when I heard it. There's a level of numbness when I heard when my dad tried to kill himself. And this wasn't because I didn't have feelings. I'm a very feeling bad person. But it was because this seemed like the next logical step in my dad's journey. Him attempting to take his own life seemed like the next logical step in his journey. I witnessed him over the course of 16 years kill himself with the foods that he was eating. I witnessed him self-sabotage his mind, his beliefs, his thoughts, and the vehicle that God gave him with the food that he was eating. And so when I heard that my dad tried to take his own life, I wasn't that surprised. I wasn't captivated. You know how they say, like, it's usually the people who you're really not worried about that you really should be worried about. I was really worried about my dad. Like, this made sense to me, right? And so what the effect of this was it took the level of resentment that I have from my father and kind of put a cherry on top. was like, you thought you resented your father for indirectly shortening his lifespan with foods that he was eating. He just took an act where he said, I want to take my own life. And to me, at 60 years old, the way I processed that was, got it, Dad. I understand. I'm not good enough for you to want to be heroes. The thought of being with your son for the rest of your life wasn't enough to get you through whatever you're doing. Got it. That's my value. That's my worth. I understand exactly how much you love it. It's driving me nuts. I want to be with him. And that's all I could now. So my response to feeling unworthy of my dad's love was turning that resentment and progressing that resentment into hate. Okay? The really, really scary part about resentment, I want to warn you guys about this. Steer to resentment with anyone in your lives. Okay? Even if it's a small seed of resentment, like when my whole cat used to pee on Joey's clothes. And been a small seed of resentment. We took care of that. We reconciled. But that could have been a really small seed of resentment. Resentment is really, really dangerous because there's no emotion in between resentment and hate. There's no emotion in between resentment and hate. And so if you're experiencing resentment for somebody, the next step, if that resentment isn't dealt with, is hate. Okay? It's antagonism. And so my dad became the antagonist in my life. All of my problems, all of my pains, all of my struggles, all of me not reaching my goals, all of me not experiencing the pleasures that I wanted to, that was my dad's fault. Okay? This grew so poorly. This progressed so bad that I remember one time my dad sat me down. I'm at the kitchen table. My mom's like cooking, my little brother's doing something like just the middle of the day. He sits me down and he's like, son, I want to ask you something. I'm like, what, Dad? Sit down, Mr. Nine. He's like, son, why do you hate me? My dad looked at me and asked me, why do you hate me? And my outward reaction was, Dad, I don't hate you. Straight face, try to pick up the conversation as soon as possible. My inward reaction was, whoa, my dad knows I hate you. That's tough. So I was at the point where me and my father's relationship seemed unreconcilable. I was at the point where I blamed him for so much hurt that I thought I will never be close to this man because he is the epitome of everything I don't want to become. And in fact, I'm going to use him and my anger towards him so it fuels what I want to become. Right? Because my dad was unhealthy, I'm going to be super freaking healthy. Because my dad had lost credibility as the leader of his family, man, I'm going to try to become the best leader I could be. I used that anger for fuel. We talk a lot, actually. We hear a lot about using anger for fuel. I think you can use anger for fuel, but I think you'd be grace and goodness at some point too. You can't have everything you do be filled by hate. Anyway, this relationship was unreconcilable. Wanted nothing to do with my dad. I lived 8 minutes away from him for about 3 years, and I would see him once every 3 months. When he would call me on the phone, I'd click end. Would miss calls, I'd see a call and click end. And I thought we were totally done. And anyway, over the course of a few years, I did my own personal work to try to forgive my father just so, not for him, not because I wanted a relationship, but just so it wasn't eating me alive every single day, right? I did the work to forgive my father. I felt pretty good and still had a relationship with him. And this summer, at our Default Kings event in July, I witnessed God heal my father and I's relationship with him in a way that I thought was impossible. Okay? It was a really unique way to heal our relationship. You see, before this event, I asked my dad to be a participant in the live interview at the event. I said, Dad, I'd like to interview you at my event. And he was like, what do you want to interview me about? I was like, Dad, honestly, I just want to ask you a few questions, and I want you to share about why you value your health now. And basically asking him, like, Dad, like, I want you to share your greatest mistakes, failure, and pains. ask. I don't want you to share with these guys why they shouldn't do the same things you do. Like, pretty tough thing to ask for that. So he's like, okay, son. My dad has always wanted to help me. Even when I didn't really feel his love, he still loved me. He supported me. He's like, I'll do it. Of course. Awesome. Like that. So we show up to this event, conduct a live interview. Very minimal preparation. I'm just going to ask him a few questions and have him share from the heart. And in this interview, my dad's talking about the effects of his poor health. And he starts to tell the story about how his poor health led to depression and how his depression led to a suicide. Now, if you were there, you would have seen me start to tear up like crazy and essentially bawl before my dad even talked about the suicide, because I knew where the story was leading. And the reason it was so intense for me witnessing this was because this was the first time in my life that I ever heard my dad apologize for the effect that his suicide attempt had on me. It was the first time in my life that me and my dad even ever talked about the suicide. You guys remember when my mom heard that her husband attempted suicide and did tell her son? My dad never talked about it with me. Never heard the words come out of my parents' mouth. Dealt with that alone. Dealt with that in shame. So I hear my dad apologize in front of all the guys who were out there. Everybody's freaking crying. I get up. I'm hugging my dad. My little brother gets up from the crowd. He's bawling. And we share this moment of embrace where we all just have this mutual understanding. Hey, everything's forgiven. Everything is forgiven. There's no more walls up there, no more secrets. There's just healing, there's just love, there's grace here. In that moment, God put the cherry on top of healing my dad and men's relationship. The cherry out the fuel with us and our relationship. And down. Since then, my dad's helped us continue to progress. And he called me the other day and he was like, Gabe, you know what? I think my true purpose in life is actually to share this story to help other people. And so I've already witnessed how God has healed our relationship. I can't wait to witness even more how God's going to use my dad's story to heal other men. And we're struggling with thoughts, depression, thoughts of suicide. We're struggling with blood. That's one of the most profound ways that I've witnessed God's goodness in my life. Now, there's one more interesting thing about me that I want to share with you guys before we actually dive into the meat of this message. And the other interesting thing that I've been known for a little bit more in the business world, is that I've been banned on Twitter 5 times. I have been banned on Twitter 5 times. And Joey and I have this saying, we're talking about fishing and other stuff. What our saying is, hey, one's a fluke, two's a pattern. One's a fluke, two's a pattern. You don't win by a second time, you're kind of just, the L is on you, right? Now, if one's a fluke, two's a pattern, I have no idea what the hell 5 is. 5 times is straight up blatant ignoring whatever the heck is going on. And so I've been banned on Twitter 5 times. Part of the reason that I've been banned on Twitter 5 times is because we're both Twitter. I think that was accurate acknowledged. I appreciate you acknowledging that. People already got that. I try to be very bold on Twitter. I share my views, I share my values. I try to meet people with a very straightforward reality of how their health is affecting them. And one of the most bold tweets that I ever put out, I believe this might be one of my best tweets. Some people might not agree. One of the boldest tweets that I ever put out read, this is me talking about my entrepreneurial journey. Okay. What the tweet read, my first employee suggested that I add preferred pronouns to our client intake. And 1 week later, that employee was unemployed. Period. Big Nick people. You can't find that tweet anywhere now. You can find it, it's gone. You did remember it in your odds.
King David, that name ring a bell? Anyone? He did this pretty cool thing where he picked up this stone, slingshot a giant, killed him, beheaded him. Peak example in the Bible of confidence, bravery, conviction, drive. That King David, the chosen one. King David, pretty much all I knew about King David until about maybe 2.5 years ago was that he killed Goliath. Great dude, superhero, right? Bible superhero. But I later learned that King David, the chosen one, the hero, made a really big mistake in his life too. A really nasty mistake. King David, you see, was a king. And so in that context, that part of history, the king's property was kind of elevated above the rest of the properties. And what that meant was that King David can kind of look down into the surrounding properties and kind of see what was going on, right? You ever feel like sometimes in 2023 we have access to see things that we're not really sure that we should be seeing? Anyone ever feel that way when you watch the news or open social media? I feel that way sometimes. Anyway, King David is pretty much in this exact situation. And he sees something he likes, okay? He sees a mamacita. Bathsheba had that body on her, apparently, okay? King David notices this. Now, the interesting detail about Bathsheba is that she was married. Bathsheba had a husband. King David was not in the spot that he was supposed to be. He should have been out there fighting the battle. He was home, chilling. Anyone ever feel like they're not where they're supposed to be? I was supposed to be out there fighting this battle, but I'm home, chilling. Weird. Bad things happen. You're not out fighting your battles anyway. And so King David, Goliath slaying King David, honorable, brave King David, has a little moment of weakness, and instead of admitting what he did was wrong, King David is like, dude, husband's out to war. I like you. Let's have a night. And after he has the night with the lady, he pretty much comes with this ploy to have her husband killed out in battle. Okay, he has him killed. Bathsheba's husband gone. Bathsheba belongs to David now. Super messed up move, right? Imagine how messed up that would be. When I first heard this, I was like, dude, King David sucks. Okay. He ended up writing part of the book of Psalms after this took place. You know Psalms, right? The OG Twitter. Proverbs and Psalms. The OG Twitter. Those one-liners or bangers, King David. He wrote part of the book of Psalms after this took place. And what this story taught me was that God can literally use anyone. God can redeem any pain. God can use any bad for his good. Anyone agree? God can use bad for his good.
No, sir.
He really can. King David is a prime example of that. And so, anyway, that story really inspires me to say, hey, I know God can use what bad is taking place in my life, and he can use that for good. That's why I'm bold. Right? But there has been one part of my life that I haven't been bold about. There's been one secret that I've kept from the world up to this point. Okay? One pretty deep, dark, painful, shameful secret that I haven't been bold about online. And I'm going to share that with you guys here today for the first time. Because I know that God can use it for his good. Same way he used David's situation for good. Same way he kept using David for good after he messed up. But before I dive into that secret and reveal that to you guys, I want you guys to know the title of this message. Okay, the title of this message is, How do you say yes to God when there's a gun to your head? How do you say yes to God when there's a gun to your head? The reason that I'm bringing this up is because I do believe that when you feel called to experience the blessings of God, when you want to witness the goodness of God, like I've witnessed in my life, you're going to be faced with some really tough decisions. Some decisions that hurts. That really hurt. Matt, Joey, can you think of any few tough decisions I've made in my life over the last year? Few. I think we're going to be faced with really tough decisions. I remember one time I was faced with this decision in my business of firing somebody and keeping them. And I called one of my mentors, and I was like, man, like, I really don't want to fire this guy. He's a great guy. He works his butt off, really aligns with our mission. Now, the choice on paper was obvious. He wasn't performing. And I remember my mentor saying, like, Gabe, this is why I get paid big bucks. You get the big bucks to make these tough decisions. I do believe that if we want to make the big bucks in every area of our lives, financially in business, but in relationships, you want to have that dream relationship you never thought possible. You want Christ to redeem a relationship that you thought was shattered. You want Christ to use you to build his kingdom. You want to make the big bucks in other areas of life, you're going to have to make some tough decisions. You might have to make some fires in order to keep making the big bucks, okay? And so when I say, how do you say yes to God when there's a gun to your head? What I'm talking about is how do you make the really, really difficult decision where it feels like it's choosing God is killing you. Or it feels like choosing God is killing you. In Matthew 10:33, Jesus, happy, peaceful, hippie, go-lucky, nice guy Jesus, says, if you deny me on earth before men, this is Jesus talking. If you deny me on earth before men, I will deny you before my Father in heaven. Come on, Jesus. Why'd you have to say that, man? Come on, chill. If I deny you here on earth, that's insane. But it's true, okay? Now, when I first heard this verse, I was like a kid. And I remember picturing like, got it. If a terrorist ever takes me hostage and is like, say you don't believe in Jesus or I'll kill you, I'll say I believe in Jesus. I got it. That's what I pictured. Anyone else kind of picture a scenario like that when you hear that? I'm like, got it. If somebody ever holds a gun to my head and says deny Jesus or that, I'll say I love Jesus. Cool, I'll take the L. I'm good. I'll go to heaven. Sweet. Now, I feel like this extreme picture that comes to some of our minds when we hear that verse is kind of like a cop-out to avoid the uncomfortable, because we know that there's a very low likelihood that that's ever going to happen. Wish that upon no one, even though it has happened to some people.
Probably never gonna happen.
I think we picture that because we understand subconsciously that it's not that there's going to be some big moment where we're asked to deny Jesus. I think we really know that every single day, multiple times a day, we can be asked to deny Jesus. Before men, maybe when someone asks you, why do you go to church? You kind of shut down a little bit. No, it's just a thing I do. It does sometimes. Maybe when, you come across that thing you shouldn't be seeing online, kind of being asked, do I deny Jesus for my own desires? Right? Maybe I deny Jesus for the expectations of others. When I feel called to do something, when I feel called to go all in and build a freaking house of steel. Something I'm guessing a few people probably thought was kind of crazy. But you felt called to do it. Right? I think we're asked to deny Jesus every single day, multiple times a day, by our own desires, by other men, by expectations, by fears that we have. We're asked to choose between Jesus and something else. And so what I want to do for you today, by the end of this message, is I want to share with you 3 things that you can do to prepare yourself to choose Jesus when you're asked to deny him. 3 things you can do to prepare yourself to choose Jesus when you're asked to deny him. The reason I'm going to share this with you guys, the reason I feel like I can share this with you guys is because I feel like I've been through situations in my life this year where I've been asked in profound, gut-wrenching ways to choose Jesus with a gun in my head. To choose Jesus and lose everything you know and love and have your life be ripped out from under you. And I've been able to say, yes, I've been able to say I choose Jesus. Now, I've messed this question up a bunch of times. Don't worry. Man, I still mess this question up every single day. I've messed it up in big ways, I've messed it up in small ways, but this year, I answered yes in a really, really big way. And to kind of paint the picture of how I answered yes when I felt like there's a gun being held in my head, I need you guys to understand that I have always been a wholesome guy. Right? I've always been the wholesome guy. Good intentions, great values. Right? I never really had like a major haram phase in my life where I was just out on the town going crazy, sinning. I was always pretty wholesome. I was raised in the church. My parents brought me to church. Great church experiences, no real church hurt. Glory to God. Believed in God my whole life. Tried to read the Bible by like the age of 12. I was saved at 12. I always had like a really pretty healthy image of God, like at a very young age. And the way that this wholesomeness showed up was for me in 7th grade. I met this pretty mamacita in 7th grade. And I was like, I like this girl. I'm gonna ask her to be my girlfriend. And so I asked this girl to be my girlfriend in 7th grade, and we date for like a month. Okay, anyone here remember what it felt like to be 13 years old, right? Especially with girls, right? Like you're freaking, man, I don't want to bring out the hot glue gun reference, but it's 13. Right? You're just like, man, I'm a fully functioning adult male. That's how we all felt at 13. I felt at 13. Now, you probably felt that way at 13. I was still like, yes, but no, Jesus. And so I dated this girl in 7th grade, didn't kiss her once. I might have held her hand a few times. Joey says I moved slow. Totally true. It's a good thing. Held her hand a few times, maybe. Didn't kiss her once. And we were well into our relationship. We were a serious 7th grade relationship. And I remember deciding that I didn't break up with this girl. Okay. So I sit down next to her one day at lunch on the patio, kind of like this, and I'm like, hey, like, I need to talk to you in private. Let's go to the corner table of the patio where everyone can see us ears. But, you know, no one else is there, so it's private. Let's talk. Sit her down. And I'm like, hey, I'm not going to name names, but hey, girl. Look, I really don't think that we should be dating. She's like, hey, why? I'm like, hey, you know that God's the most important thing in my life. And I believe that you really should be dating someone unless you plan on marrying them. Now I'm going to be honest, I don't plan on marrying you. Tears filled her eyes. She says, okay. Because it's an impenetrable argument, of course. And she gets up, she leaves. We broke up right there on the spot. Boom. Jesus, wholesome. This wholesomeness, this pattern of wholesomeness followed me into my next relationship. That started in 9th grade. See this girl? Have the hots for her, right? And I started to think, man, I think I want to date this girl. So let me bring this back to God. Let me bring this back to Jesus. And let me pray about this girl before I ask her out. Right? 9th grade, 15 years old. Don't even understand how the world works in any way, but I'm praying to God, kind of asking him like, hey, should I date this girl? I have no idea how to pray at the time, by the way. It's okay if you don't know how to pray. Matt has a really good, more structure for an effective way to pray. But I prayed to God for like a week about this girl. God, if I should date this girl, just tell me. Just tell me. Just tell me yes or no. If it's a no, I won't do it. If it's a yes, I will. And at the end of the week, I feel like I might somewhat kind of have an answer of yes. Don't ask me out. But I decided, you know what, I'm going to ask this girl out. So I asked this girl out. We start dating, 9th grade, right? 15 years old. We're dating. Things are going well. We stay together sophomore year, junior year, senior year. Stay together all throughout high school. Prom king and queen. Cutest couple. We kind of become like the hometown heroes in terms of our relationship, right? Like we're the love story that everybody's rooting for. And the really cool thing happened next when it's time to move on to college. We stay in the same hometown. Awesome. We stay together. Fantastic. Things are progressing. Now, after a year of college, still being with the same girl, I start my business, right? I start to get very clear on my values. I reintroduce myself to God. I come back to my faith after years of being away from it. And I'm still with this girl. I'm still building my business. We get to the point where we're finally making money. We didn't make a single dollar in profit for 16 months. Man, that sucked. But we made it through. I started making money. About a year after I start profiting in my business, I'm making enough money to where I'm like, I can provide for a family. Heck yeah, I can provide for a family. And that starts to beg the question of, well, Gabe, you've been with this girl for 7 years. Your high school sweethearts. It's perfect. It's a perfect love story. You're making the amount of money where you can provide. What's the holdup? When are you getting married? When are you getting married? Man, the amount of times I got asked that freaking question that year was crazy. And when people would ask me, I would be like, oh, I don't know. I'm just waiting, I guess. I had no good answer to why I hadn't proposed to this girl yet, right? It seemed like the next logical step. And so I kind of think, well, it only makes sense to propose to her. We've been together for 7 years. I'm making enough money. Fine, whatever. So I get the ring, and I remember buying this ring and taking it to my car as soon as I bought it. And I was in the driver's seat with this ring that I just bought, and I was looking at this ring, and I was staring at it, and I was like, wow, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. Why does my heart hurt? I was like, why do I have the feeling in my gut like I'm about to throw up? Why do I feel sick to my stomach? This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. This is the most beautiful thing that's supposed to happen in my life. I'm going to propose to this girl. Why do I feel something off? Why does my intuition feel off? Do you guys ever have the question of like, can I trust my intuition? Like I have a feeling like this is wrong. Can I trust myself? Little side note, the way that you know you can trust your intuition is if you are consistently in the Word of God and you are consistently in the presence of God. Okay? If you're not consistently in the Word, if you're not consistently in His presence, then that's your flesh. Okay? That's your flesh. Your intuition is your flesh. You cannot recognize the voice of God if you've never read it. You can't recognize the presence and spirit of God if you're never in it. So at this point in my life, proposal season, I was kind of in it, kind of out of it. Lukewarm. It's fine if you're there. But what that meant was my spirit was just at war with my flesh in this decision. My spirit was like, this is wrong. Do not do it. Run away. Don't do this. My flesh was like, but the expectations of everybody else around me. Well, what would it feel like if I came to my mom and dad and was like, hey, I just wasted the last 7 years of my life? Right? It felt comfortable. Man, my flesh loves comfort. It loves comfort, man. It felt comfortable to just stay with the girl that I've been with this whole time. Not explore. Not really see if I'm the man I think I am. By seeing what other women thought of me. It felt really comfortable. And so, my flesh won. And I ended up proposing to this girl. And as soon as I slipped that ring on her finger, everything changed about our relationship. I previously had the belief that I've been with this girl for 7 years, I'm basically married. Anyone ever feel like that if you've been in a long-term relationship? We're basically married. We do all the same stuff normal married couples do. We live together. We hang out together. Our routines are aligned. Money is starting to get mixed in. We do everything that married couples do. Everything that married couples do. We're basically married. There's just a ring for the officialness of it. Right? That's how I felt. As soon as that ring slipped on her finger, that belief immediately shifted. Because that ring meant permanence. That ring meant the promise of a covenant. Okay? A promise that cannot be broken. And what that meant was all the things that I had let by the wayside, all the things I turned a blind eye to, all the tugs on my heart that God had been giving me over years, now that the ring was there, man, they were screaming in my face. oh crap, we have to deal with this now. And so me and my former fiance, we start having these arguments, these wars, these battles. And they're not like just purely hurtful, toxic arguments. They're just arguments about the really important stuff, right? What would we do if we had kids together and there was another pandemic and they were trying to force vaccines into our children? What would we do? I have one opinion, you have this opinion. How are we going to handle that? What will we do when dad's going to church on Sunday mornings, mom's not? And the kids ask mama, is God real? You have one opinion, I have the other. Those type of questions started to come up. And when those questions started to come up, it became more and more clear to me that I was choosing something that God didn't want for me. I was choosing something that God didn't want for me. Okay? It became so clear to me that I was choosing something that God didn't want for me. And the reason it became so clear was because I was trying to get clear on it. Like, we started having these arguments, these conversations. I invested in counseling. We were going to counseling together. That really improved our communication. It's a good thing. I highly recommend it. But what that meant was we were just able to conclude faster that we disagreed on all the important things. It became undeniable that we weren't meant for each other. Okay? I'm still trying to fix things. Still trying to see, maybe I can bend this person's arm a little bit. Maybe I can change her. And one of the last ditch efforts that I made to try to save this relationship was taking myself and my former fiance to a couples retreat, okay, in Nashville, Tennessee. And this couples retreat was no foo-fee-foo-lie, jokey couples retreat. This was the king of all couples retreats. This was the type of couples retreat that the most powerful, most wealthy people in the world go to, okay? Any of you guys ever heard of a company called Zoom? Ever heard of that company? Kind of a big company. Ex-president of Zoom was at this couples retreat. This is as good as it gets, right? If there's anything that's going to save our relationship, it's going to be this couples retreat right here. By the way, this couples retreat is put on by Jeremy and Svetlana Newsom. It was the best couples retreat I could have ever imagined. Those are very, very, very amazing people who helped me tremendously. But we went to this couples retreat. There's a lot of good from it, but I was just even more clear that I was choosing something God didn't want for me. It became abundantly clear that I was choosing something God didn't want for me. And so I stayed in this relationship, and a few months go by, and then Joey and myself, we go on this yacht trip, okay? We go across the globe to Croatia. We're on a yacht, man. We're on a freaking yacht. And life is good. Life is good. It's this yacht trip. It's kind of like a 80% vacation, 20% business networking type trip. So Joey and I go, and we're just like, man, we're living life. Man, we're really doing it. Like, this is like peak life. Remember how it felt that first night looking at like the sunset and the bay? Like, dude, this is peak life. We're doing it. Best trip ever already. So glad we came. Thank you, God. Let's go. Croatian yacht trip. And what I didn't realize until like 2 days into this yacht trip was that God was going to allow me to go through war on this yacht trip. Man, I just paid for this awesome vacation, awesome networking opportunity. I just want to kick it back, have a good time. And God's like, yeah, this is going to be the toughest battle of your entire life. And so what happened on this yacht trip was, without sharing the personal details, God made it as clear as it could possibly be to me that I was choosing something that he didn't want for me in my relationship with this woman. God was like nose to nose with me. Like, yo, Dave, you know that like last 3 years of warning signs I've been giving you that you've been ignoring, that you kind of doubled down on by buying the ring and proposing, Remember when you ignored me that way? This is the last time that I'm going to tell you that this is not what I want for you. It's your decision if you want to listen. Anyone ever feel like God's kind of in your nose, being like, yo, answer's very clear. You decide. One of my favorite analogies to explain this is the boat analogy. Okay? The analogy goes something like this. There's a man drowning in the ocean, and he's praying to God, God, please save me. Drowning in the ocean. And so this boat passes by, and the people on the boat are like, dude, we got a life raft. Want some help? Dude's like, no. Man, I'm good. God's got me. God is going to save me. Peace out. Boat leaves. Second boat comes by. They're like, what's up, man? You're looking pretty tired over there. Looks like you're starting to gurgle some water. Want to come on board? And the dude's like, no, man, God's got me. Third boat comes. We're going to come to you, okay? We're going to have Coast Guard officers on this freaking life raft. They're going to jump through water. They're going to save you. You down? Dude's like, no, don't come. God's got me. God's going to save me. So this third boat leaves and the man drowns. He dies. And dude gets to heaven. And he's like, God, why didn't you save me? God, why didn't you save me? And God's like, I sent you 3 boats, you dummy. I sent you 3 freaking boats. What this shot trip felt like was my third boat. This felt like God's last-ditch effort of making it clear to me that he wanted something different from me, okay? And so I had a big decision to make when I realized this is God's last boat. I had a big decision to make. Am I gonna hop aboard the boat? Am I gonna choose what God wants for me? Or am I gonna be so stubborn and so stuck in my own comfort and so stuck in my own desires and so stuck in my own fears of what other people are gonna think that I'm gonna be like, nah, I'll be good. Move on. What was I gonna do? And so at this point in time, I had this decision to make, and I ended up at some point on this cruise making the decision that I was gonna end things with my fiance. That I was gonna end things with my fiance. And so we have about 19-hour travel back home, and we start making our way back home. We have a layover in Paris, get like 1 hour of sleep, and we finally make it back to Orlando. I walk through the doors, text my fiance, hey, I'm home. And she knew we needed to talk about something. And I'm tired, had 1 hour sleep in the last day. Been traveling this whole time. My bags weren't even there yet. My bags were stuck in freaking Paris. And my fiance texted me, okay, Gabe, cool. I'm coming home from work. I'll be home in 20 minutes. Do you want to talk tonight? I know you're really tired, or do you want to talk tomorrow? I said, no, I want to talk tonight. I want to talk tonight. So 20 minutes after I get back home from this trip, my fiance comes to the door. We sit on the couch and we end things. We end things. And this was by far the most painful decision I've ever had to make in my life. By a magnitude of 100 compared to any other decision I've ever had to make in my life. And when she walked out the door, I felt a level of pain that I wish upon no one. It felt like a dagger was jabbed into my chest when she walked out the door and twisted around. It felt like a part of me had just left. It felt literally like a limb from my body was being ripped away from my body. A huge part of who I thought I was, a huge part of who I thought I was going to be, a huge part of who everyone else in my life thought I was, just got ripped apart. A huge part of my identity just got ripped apart. Imagine if Elevate was taken away from Matt. How badly do you think that would hurt Matt? Imagine if the gym was taken away from Jeremy. This huge part of your life that people associate you with, right? I feel like you're losing a limb. You guys know how they used to torture people by tying horses to their limbs and sending the horses off in either direction, popping their limbs off their bodies? That's what this felt like. So she walks out the door. I immediately break down in tears and kind of hobble up my steps, and I'm crying. I'm just experiencing this pain, not really having conscious thought. I'm just like, whoa, I'm just here experiencing this pain, and I'm crying and weeping, sobbing like you guys have never heard before. Man, Joey's heard me ugly cry, I think, a few times. But dude, this was different. This is crazy. I actually did have one conscious thought while I was sitting there crying. And the thought was like, oh man, my neighbors are going to think like I'm being killed right now. That was my only conscious thought. And I suffered in that for a few minutes. And then I felt like my hands were being lifted up in the middle of this sobbing. I felt like my hands were being lifted up, and I felt like my head was being lifted up to God, and I continued to cry, but the sadness was gone. The pain was gone. And it didn't feel like I was lifting my own hands. Like there was no conscious thought of, oh, let me just praise real quick so I'm stop being sad. No. It just felt like angels came down from heaven and lifted up my hands and lifted up my head. I was still crying, but this feeling of having a rim lift away from my body turned into a feeling of having a weight lifted off my shoulders. The beauty of me being able to choose God when it felt like there was a gun being held to my head was that I experienced a level of love from God that is indescribable by human words. I experienced a level of peace from God that is indescribable by human words. And that peace and that love wasn't even the end of it, okay? That peace and love is everything. That was not the end of it. After making that decision, I am now, Joey and Matt, you guys are the ones who know me personally, but I'm now experiencing blessings from God in my life that are also indescribable with words. I'm experiencing blessings from God in my life in this specific area where every time I look at this area of my life, the area of my relationship, I am pointed directly back to God. I'm seeing a reflection of God's love. What I am saying is that if you can make that decision, if you can choose God when there's a gun being held to your head, you're going to experience blessings beyond what you can ever ask or imagine. Okay? Now, how does experiencing blessings beyond what you can imagine sound to everyone here? How does reaching levels of wealth beyond what you even want sound to everyone here? How does experiencing a relationship with a woman that's more loving than anything you've ever experienced, anything you've ever imagined, sound to everyone here? Sound good? Anyone want blessings beyond what they can even ask God for? I do. Shoot. Better than I can imagine sounds pretty freaking good. And so I promise you guys, if you can make that call, then you'll experience those blessings beyond what you can ask for or imagine. Now, let's get to the tactical stuff. How the hell, Gabe, do we prepare ourselves to make that call? And I just started to look at other people in the Bible who were able to make these type of calls. Okay? People in the Bible who came to mind that were able to make these type of calls were the disciples after the Great Commission, the disciples after Jesus died and rose from the dead. The disciples, after Jesus died and rose from the dead, were martyred. Okay, they were killed in his name. They were literally faced with the decision of, are you going to choose God with a gun to your head? Literally. And they chose God. Okay? They were beheaded. They were tortured. They were crucified. They wore crowns of thorns. And they were crucified upside down. And so I try to look at what's the difference between us and those guys, the guys who were able to make those calls. What's the difference between us and the disciples who actually were able to say yes when they were faced with a sword to their neck, not a gun to their head, but when they were faced with death if they were to choose God? What's the key differences? And I found 3 key differences. And the first thing that I notice about the disciples that makes them really, really unique compared to us is that the disciples actually walked with God. They actually walked with Jesus, okay? And so the first thing that you need to make sure that you are doing if you want to be prepared to make the call that's going to lead to the blessing is you need to be walking with God. You need to be walking with the living, breathing God. How, Gabe, do I walk with God? Bro, Jesus is dead, rose again, not here, 2023. How do you walk with God in 2023? I think you walk with God in 2023 with biblical consistency, doing the basics consistently. That means reading your Bible. This might sound like an obvious one, but I heard read your Bible from the day I was born, and I didn't really start reading it consistently until like a year and a half ago. Anyone else hear this advice and still kind of have struggles with biblical consistency? Crazy, right? It's impossible to recognize the voice of God if you've never read it. Okay? So I believe the first step to walking with God is to read your Bible consistently. And don't just read it. Don't just open it up. Man, I know God works in mysterious ways, guys, but I really advise against the flip a random page open in the Bible and just see what happens. Super useful, super intentional behavior there. I think that you need to, when you open the Bible, treat that Bible as your spiritual nutrition. Okay, treat the Bible, treat the words that you're reading as the protein that you're taking in when we're trying to build muscle. Right? We know we don't take in the protein, the workout that we just suffered through was a waste. We're not building an ounce of muscle from that workout. Yet, we go through this spiritual warfare in our lives. We go through these struggles. We do the workout, and we don't nourish our soul. What a waste. What was the point of suffering if you're not nourishing your soul, if you're not rebuilding the strength of your soul? So biblical consistency. I think to walk with God, you also need to be having conversations with him. Think the disciples. They were able to walk right up to Jesus and be like, yo, Jesus, what does this mean? What does that mean? What should we do? How should we act? How should we behave? Have conversations with God. Really cool thing. God gave us the ability to have conversations with him through this little practice called prayer. Anyone ever heard of prayer? Super obvious. But I didn't pray consistently until like a year and a half ago. Even though I knew that I literally had access to the living, breathing God through prayer, I still would experience a life struggle and be like, how do I figure this out? If only I had some connection to the source of all eternal knowledge, the creator of the universe. That would be awesome right now. That's what prayer is. Read your Bible and pray consistently. And I think the last thing that the disciples were doing in their walk with God was that they were surrounded by other men who had their hearts turned towards God. They were surrounded by other men who had their hearts turned towards God. And so I do believe that if we want to develop the strength to make those tough calls and bring on the blessings that God has for us, we need to be walking with other men of God. Okay? Now, what I'm not saying is you need to only associate with religious elites. What I am saying is that you should walk with people who are also trying to follow God. Okay? You're walking with people who are also trying to follow God. So a real practical way to do that is join Elevate. Okay? Shameless plug. Join Elevate. I think I'm going to link it too. Join Elevate. If you're watching this and you're not here, every single man here is currently walking alongside other men who have their hearts turned towards God. Okay? Continue to do this stuff and take it beyond Elevate. Take it outside of that Discord. That Discord is amazing. We have a similar community in Default Kings. It is life-changing. But take it into your hometowns. I've heard a lot of talk about small towns this weekend. We're in a small town. We're in Ohio. Didn't even know this place existed until I met Joey. Small town, small dude. Sorry, bro. I I heard a lot of talk about small towns this week. And I heard a lot of talk about how my small town, man, it limits me. It makes it really hard to meet other men of God. It makes it really hard to network, build my business. It makes it really hard to surround myself with good people. Fair. I'm sure it's hard, dude. But hard is not an excuse for God can't work. All right? That's the first thing. We need to walk with God. There's two more things, guys. The second thing we need to do on top of walking with God is we need to witness God. We need confidence in God. We need to have some credibility that we can point back to, that we can say, that we can assure ourselves that it's going to allow us to believe that God can work and God will work in this situation. Okay? And this is a lot easier when you've seen God move in big ways. Fair. So how do you witness God being good when you haven't seen him deliver yet? Or should I say, not when you haven't seen him deliver, but when you haven't opened your heart to receiving what he has for you yet. I think practicing gratitude in a very basic level, it's like a self-improvement type of piece of advice. Practice gratitude, makes you feel better. True. But I do believe that when we're truly practicing gratitude, what we're doing is we're looking for God in everything. Okay? So we can have gratitude for God bringing this group of men together. Man, I see God working here. Anyone else see God working this weekend? Sheesh, amen. And if you don't really see God working right now, I want to challenge you. And I want to point out to you that if there are others around us who can see God working, but you can't, the problem isn't God. We see him. The problem is you. You haven't opened your eyes to seeing him. You haven't truly sought after him with an open heart. And so I believe gratitude is a great way to practice, to build that muscle of looking for God in everything. Whether that's taking gratitude for the cup of coffee in the morning, whether it's taking gratitude for an event as powerful as Elevate House of Steel 2023, have a regular practice of being grateful. And you will start to witness God in everything. You'll start to witness God in everything. And the second thing you can do to witness God is worship God. Is worship God. Worship is this thing we do as Christians. And we clap and we sing and we say, Jesus loves me, yes I know, 'cause the Bible tells me so. I challenge you to worship God more frequently. I challenge you to take your worship beyond the Sunday service where I'm just showing up and doing what I got to do and clapping along like a sheep. Take your worship outside of church, because when you worship God, what you're saying is, God, I acknowledge you. God, I see you. God, I know you are the Lord of my life. God, I acknowledge that you saved me. You're practicing witnessing God. You're taking yourself through this practice saying, God, I know you're there. I know you got me. Oh, hear this, guys, because I believe this. Funny story, but hear this. You are not hardcore for enduring unnecessary suffering. You're not. You're stupid. I was stupid. I endured so much unnecessary suffering. I literally used to vocalize to these guys, man, this sucks. I'll do it, though. Hell yeah. I'll dive on that sword. Why? There's no mobility in unnecessary suffering, guys. So, anyway, to get back to my point, you need to know your mission. You need to know what you're called to do, who you're called to be, or else you're suffering unnecessarily. You're putting in all that effort, you're pulling the trigger, you're not in any target. And so the practical thing I want to give you for how you guys can figure out what's my purpose, who am I called to be, what does God want for me, is this really powerful practice that I actually did on the yacht. Okay, I did this practice on the yacht. This was the practice for me that really, this was the clicking moment of, oh, I need to make this hard call. The practice that I'm going to give you guys today is really powerful, and you can do it more than once. And this practice is writing your own eulogy. Writing your own eulogy. Your eulogy is, a eulogy is something that people read about you at your funeral, where they describe what you were like. Right? And so if you write your own eulogy, it's going to make it really clear. It's going to force you to try to figure out this is where I want to end up on my deathbed. This is who I want to be. This is who I want to be, who I think I'm called to be. Okay, so if you write your eulogy, when you write your eulogy, write it from the perspective of somebody reading it at your funeral. Not, I want to be X, Y, Z. Not, I want to have this much money. I want to have this type of family. Write it as someone reading it at your funeral. He was a man who had this level of wealth and used his money for X, Y, Z reasons. He was a man who loved his wife unconditionally and had a family that loved him too. He was a man whose health was an example to his children. His relationship was the relationship that honored God, that empowered him to serve God's people better and please God better. Is that the relationship that you currently have? You can do this for every area of life. Okay, it's going to make it really easy, really clear. And this ain't going to be a fun exercise. It's not going to be that fun. It's going to hurt. It's going to humble you. It's going to make it really clear. Man, you might really realize what calls you need to make when you do this eulogy exercise. So I'm just going to warn you guys. Okay? You're going to be like, dang it, Gabe. Why'd you recommend this? Now I know the hard decision I need to make. Crap. This is my last boat. And I do believe that if you walk with God and you witness God and you're clear on God's purpose for your life, you will develop the strength and faith required to make a decision that might feel like a limb being ripped from your body, but a decision that will immediately be met with a level of peace and love from God that you never thought possible. A decision that will absolutely be followed up by God with a blessing that is beyond anything you could ask or imagine. That's it. Thanks, guys.